This week, our Torah portion is called Pinchas, named for a zealot who is venerated with God's Brit Shalom, covenant of peace. In my recent visit to Israel, I came into contact with more than one zealot, reminding me of an important lesson about zealotry, in Hebrew, zrizut. In Judaism's Musar tradition, zrizut is a soul trait to be cultivated. Zealotry has a bad name, but eagerness, enthusiasm, and even zeal for getting the job done are admirable, provided, of course, that the cause is just. As for Pinchas, I'll let you be the judge. Pinchas, a priest, comes upon an Israelite man and a Midianite woman engaged in sexual intercourse. There is no hint that they have committed any crime unless a liaison between an Israelite and a non-Israelite is prohibited. Pinchas's response is to murder them both in cold blood. Even if Torah made such a deed punishable by death, which it doesn't, Pinchas would have an obligation to warn the couple, providing them an opportunity to change their ways. At least one more witness would be required to testify alongside Pinchas in a judicial proceeding before they could be executed. The sages received a beautiful Torah with a few god-awful stories and laws, and they had to reckon with them. In the Torah, Pinchas's honor comes right after his murderous zealotry. However, the rabbis placed Pinchas's murderous rage at the end of last week's Torah portion, where it might be ignored. They gave us a week between the story of Pinchas's actions and his honor, hoping the memory of his crime would fade before we celebrate his Brit Shalom, that covenant of peace. For good measure, the Talmud clarifies that sexual relations between a Jew and non-Jew is not a capital crime. Sadly, though, Pinchas's zealotry remains alive and well in our Jewish world. On July 8th, I was among a diverse group of about 30 American rabbis visiting the occupied West Bank. Last week, the International Court of Justice concluded that Israel's West Bank occupation is illegal. That body is, of course, biased, and its rulings are suspect. Even if the occupation is legal, though, crimes and injustices are ubiquitous there, often in violation of Israeli law. As our group stood about a half kilometer from Talia Farm, a settlement that is illegal under Israeli law, we were approached by an ATV bearing Bezalel Talia, conspicuously armed. He began shouting at us. Before we knew it, the police and army had arrived, and they forced us to leave. We complied with the authorities, of course, but their orders were illegal and unjustified. We were peacefully assembled, merely observing, on public property. Israeli police are under the authority of Itamar Ben-Gvir, the self-proclaimed fascist minister of national security in Netanyahu's government. The army in the West Bank, unlike the army fighting in Gaza or protecting the rest of the country, is under the control of the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, head of the ultra-nationalist religious Zionist party, also in Netanyahu's coalition. Little wonder, then, that the police and army back the Talia family's illegal zealotry. My experience was colored by privilege. Israeli forces were not going to kill American rabbis. Still, we were harassed, and I was terrified. Not scared of Palestinians, mind you, but of a Jewish zealot. West Bank Palestinians, by contrast, live in real fear. In the words of Rabbi Jenna Shaw, our group leader, we later learned that Israeli authorities had, on the same day, demolished several structures in the South Hebron Hills just miles from where we stood. A school in La Safa, a home and animal enclosure in Kuwawis, and 2 homes and 2 animal pens in Shab el Butum. Co-founder of Breaking the Silence, Yehuda Shaul wrote on X, 20 people have become homeless and 60 children left without a school, all in a day's work by the Israeli authorities. The day before going to the West Bank, our group met Rabbi Damelin and Arab Aramin. Rabbi's son and Arab's sister died as a result of violence between Israelis and Palestinians. Instead of seeking revenge, though, instead of multiplying their hate for one another and for each other's people, Rabbi and Arab have become zealots in the cause of peace. Rabbi's son David was a gifted musician, reluctant to serve in the Israeli army because that meant he might have to go to the occupied West Bank, carrying out orders he did not respect. Ultimately, though, he became an officer, and he felt that he had to set an example for his soldiers, treating Palestinians humanely. David said, "I can't let my soldiers down, and if I don't go, someone else will and will do terrible things." David was killed by a sniper at a checkpoint that neither he nor Rabbi thought should even exist, a checkpoint that the army dismantled days after David's death. When officers came to notify Rabbi of her son's death, her immediate response was, "You may not kill anyone in the name of my child." Arab described the death of his sister Abir, killed by a rubber bullet fired by an Israeli border police officer in front of her school. She was 10 years old. Arab spoke of his love for his sister, who was a second mother to him, although she was younger, of his desire to avenge her death, and of his stone throwing at checkpoints, of his desire to kill every Israeli. Arab's father, Bassam Aramin, was having none of it. Bassam, too, had sought revenge as a 12-year-old after watching a boy die in front of him after having been shot by an Israeli soldier. At age 17, having graduated from throwing stones and empty bottles to hurling discarded hand grenades, he was arrested and imprisoned. Bassam underwent a transformation in prison. He was already a founder of Combatants for Peace before his daughter, Arab's sister, Abir, was killed. Bassam taught Arab to view both Abir and the officer who shot her as victims of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Rabbi and Arab have devoted their lives zealously to stopping the killing. Alongside Bassam and his Israeli friend Rami El-Hanan, who stood with Bassam in the hospital when Abir was dying, and whose own daughter, Smadar, has been murdered by Palestinian suicide bombers. Rami, too, has transmitted zeal for this cause to the next generation, to his son, Yigal. Pinchas is not worthy of a Brit Shalom, a covenant of peace, and neither are Bezalel Talia nor the extremists in the Netanyahu government. Thankfully, though, Israelis and Palestinians are blessed with zealots for peace, too. People like Rabbi and Abir, Bassam and Rami, and Yigal, who dedicate their lives to telling their stories in the undying hope that one day the killing will end. That one day both peoples, Israeli and Palestinian, will dwell in peace and security on the land between the river and the sea. May that be God's will. Amen.